Welcome to the Pondcast, the destination for insightful discussions and interviews on the appreciation, conservation, and husbandry of reptiles, with a focus on turtles and tortoises. Now, let's join our team of turtle nerds.
All right. Welcome. Pondcast episode 98, question mark? I thought it said 97 earlier. I'm wondering if Steve got booted off before we went live, if that got changed. 98 is right. Okay, so he fixed it. 98 is right. It is episode 98. I was like, oh man, we're going to be at episode 100 in like July, because we will be doing an extra episode in May. We're going to do one in 2 weeks from today, just to talk about current events. There are so many things going on right now, so we'll be touching on a lot of those things. But without further ado, we're here with Emily and Kevin. Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Your esteemed co-hosts. I'm Anthony, the tall turtle nerd, and then I'm going to stick with the 3T theme. And then, of course, Two Turtle Tom as our very special guest for tonight. Hi, Tom.
Thanks, Anthony. Hi, Emily.
Tom Arbour.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, welcome.
Hey, Tom.
Tom Arbour. And for anyone who doesn't know Tom, first of all, you are in for a treat, because I'm sure you're an awesome person and you're about to meet an awesome person. I'm stealing that from Ted Lasso. But the point is, Tom, awesome person that you need to know. It's a little bit, we're a little bit behind the 8 ball here on just today. Probably should have done a little while ago, but we're excited to have him. And Tom is also a great listen just in general, even if you don't like him, because he's got a heck of a radio voice. And that's one thing I appreciate about him, among many other things.
Thank you much.
Is that awkward? Should I talk after that?
I remember being a kid and just hating my voice. But now I'm used to it. So bring it on.
It's good. And I'm getting used to it too. So it's a comforting voice. I like listening to.
Speaking of radio voices, you guys remember the man with the golden voice from Columbus, Ohio, Ted Williams? Do you remember that guy? He was like 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah,
oh, it didn't
internet
make it.
Sensation.
It did. Kevin, did you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He was a homeless man.
I remember that, yes.
Yes. So Ted, 5 years later, would stop in gas stations and ask people if they wanted a signed autograph. And so I've met him several times in clubs. So anyways, there's my radio voice story.
That's awesome. And he had a heck of a radio voice. That's okay, though.
Absolutely. Mine is nothing like his.
Yours is still pretty good. Yeah.
In Turtle World, you're that guy.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
and
but less homeless.
Yes, and it's yeah. Yes, less homeless.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
I'm really happy to be here, and of course, I love to talk turtles with Ryan Dumas, who also has a fantastic voice. So
he does. You both really do, and different too. Both
a little different.
Sometimes to me, being from out here and hearing people from the Midwest that kind of sound a little bit similar to me. You guys sound really different. You have distinct, but also nice radio voices at the same time, and you complement each other well. I think your podcast is great. I love tuning into it. So anyone who hasn't checked it out, it's called Let's Talk Turtles, and it's a audio only, so it doesn't have the video component like the podcast does. It's audio only, but it's on most platforms where you get your podcasts.
That's right.
Right.
We love it.
If you want to see. Oh, go ahead. I just cut you off.
That was rude. About every 2 weeks we try to put out an episode.
Yep.
Okay.
And if you want to see Tom,
18, 19, something like that.
Oh,
awesome.
that's
back catalog
too. That's great.
Yeah, I'm not caught up.
If you want to see Tom in the video portion of the turtle media world, then check out YouTube, where he's under the name Two Turtle Tom, which is his name here. And he does some great stuff there. Live streams every Thursday night now. It used to be every Wednesday.
Every Thursday at 8. I
switched to keep me on my toes
with my friend Sean, who is a chameleon and tortoise guy, also in the Cleveland area. And he had some work changes, and so he switched to 8, and I switched to Thursday night at 8. So he switched to Wednesday at 8. So we flip-flopped. And I'm going to have him
so much.
On.
I tell you, we used to do We were the only show in town for a long time when it comes to turtles, and the first one that I could remember kind of coming out besides us was What the Shell, and I remember talking to Cody, who was doing that at the time, and he was like, "Is this okay? Like, is this okay?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And the person who we had on, who really helped me kind of solidify that thought that there's room for everyone, and we all do better if there are more people doing this sort of thing, was Mzotic, because she spoke about that in the YouTube space. Like, actually, the algorithm favors it when there are multiple creators talking about the same thing, and everybody gets more views if there are more people getting the message out there. So, and really makes our life easier because we can see, like, hey, there's a live stream a couple days before we do a podcast, and they're talking about some issue that's come up or something that's on going wild on social media or whatever like that. It actually is helpful for us for content, what we're going to talk about, because we all live busy lives and that sort of thing. So I'm loving it. I love tuning in. I think you see I'm there most nights checking you out. So I love what you're doing.
Thank you much. We are creating a whole genre of turtle media people.
That's the way it should be. I've been saying for years, like, the
Absolutely.
snake. Why are all reptile things snake people? Why there's like that's. I don't know that that's how it needs to be. I think there are other subgenres, like you said, that can really go a long way and do a lot if we put our messages out there. Especially, like turtles are, and Zach Loafman was the first person I said this. Like, turtles in the reptile space are the turtle keepers are the most conservation minded of all the reptile keepers. So, like, let's celebrate that. Let's get the message out there, and that kind of leads into other things that we've been seeing with, FWC and different laws and bills that are being proposed and passed. Maybe that was respectively backwards. Don't know. But either way, there's a lot of stuff happening that's really scary out there right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue for talking about.
You like that?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Go with it.
Audio cut out. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think we should talk about it really quickly. As everyone is aware, there's a lot going on in Florida right now with some recent events that happened with the authorities, law enforcement, and a gentleman who had some snakes put down. I'm pretty sure everyone's aware of that. My audio is cutting out. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly.
I can hear you perfectly.
Oh, okay. All right. You're cutting out on my end. Hang on a sec. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. I can hear you again. Yeah. So, Tom, you had mentioned to us earlier that you used to work with the state of Ohio. So I was wondering maybe you could give your opinion on what's going on in Florida right now.
Sure. Well, let me tell you a little bit about my experience with exotic animals and working for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Division of Wildlife, which that is the equivalent agency of the Fish and Wildlife Commission in Florida. And so I started working there in 2012. And at that time, Ohio had a reputation for being one of the most liberal states for allowing exotic animal ownership. There were virtually no regulations at the state level that prevented you from owning a tiger, a bear, a giant python. And so we were kind of on the radar for that, quite frankly. And I think Pennsylvania, Anthony, seems to have similar just kind of lax restrictions. We were even known for this exotic animal auction where people would come from around the country to actually buy, these exotic animals. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. And so that changed while I was working for the Division of Wildlife. And in 2012, there was a gentleman, and this made national news, 2012, 2013, sometime in there. I don't remember the exact could have been 2010, 2011, 2012. A gentleman owned dozens and dozens of tigers, lions, and bears.
I remember.
Yep, his private collection.
Oh my!
And so on the record, this gentleman released the animals, all of them, and ended his life. So a small rural township just outside of a small city, Zanesville, Ohio, had to grapple with 40, 50 lions, tigers, and bears that had been released.
I remember that.
Absolutely. So that was Ohio's wake up call. And I was working for the Division of Wildlife at the time when all that happened. So, I was at trainings and meetings and watching the chiefs talk about it and like, what are we going to do? So in Ohio, the Division of Wildlife was adamant that they not be the responsible agency to regulate exotic animals. They wanted to stay and focus their efforts on wild animals because that's where their expertise is. That's what they know. That's what they do.
Mhm.
They were able to successfully lobby and then basically said, no, we don't want any part of this exotic animal regulations that is coming down the pipe. We do not want to regulate exotic animals. We don't want any part of that. We think it should be the Department of Agriculture. They're the ones that certify, animal operations and things like that with exotic species like cows, horses, and so they were successful. So in Ohio, you don't have wildlife agents enforcing exotic animal laws, right? Because it's just a totally different specialty. We have people that are specialized in agriculture, so they're learning about the exotic animals only, and they're the ones enforcing that. So I just have to think if perhaps in Florida had the Fish and Wildlife Commission stayed out of the exotic animal regulations, perhaps that horrible tragic accident, which was this apparently testosterone enraged event, went down with people who, quite frankly, don't know anything about those animals. So that's my take. I really like how we did it in Ohio, and I don't think a Fish and Wildlife Commission that specializes in native wildlife really has any business regulating the exotic species. That if you're going to regulate the exotic species, bring in experts in exotic species. That's my take.
So you think Ohio's doing it the right way then?
I mean, personally, I like how we're doing it.
I like it too. I don't dislike that.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
sounds right.
People that are keeping snakes over 12 feet don't like it. And we have chronic non-compliance with that particular regulation because you have to have a special permit, insurance, double locks, similar to what Florida did for some of their big exotic snakes. But if your snake is 11 feet, 10 inches, perfectly legal. 11 feet or 12 feet 2 inches, it's illegal. So people have qualms with that part of the rule, but yeah, I like that you have people that are trained in exotic animals regulating the exotic animals, and the experts in the native wildlife, they handle wildlife violations like hunting violations. I mean, those guys that we saw there, that's what they're used to, enforcing high profile poaching rings and big money operations, things like that. So I just think it's the wrong people. They probably don't have the training they need to have to do those things. They were probably put in a really bad place by their supervisors, and then the heat of the moment and this kind of in high testosterone, high impact kind of emotion, adrenaline environment. They have snakes attacking them, and they lose all cool and situational awareness. I mean, it's the worst possible outcome, really.
I'm just happy to know that the 12-foot snakes are not going to be populating Lake Superior anytime soon.
Yeah,
That's really important to me.
Yeah. We're stopping them at the Kentucky West Virginia border, I guess. So.
we all know that they can become invasive species in the U.S. So the Everglades, Lake Superior, it's all the same thing.
So they just have a size restriction and not necessarily a species restriction?
Correct. Yep. You can keep reticulated pythons under 12 feet. Once they go over, you can still keep them. You just have to have this permit, which like only 10 people in the state have actually received. That's
They
because
don't give the permit to many people.
Well, no, nobody's applying for it, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Is it an expensive permit, or they just people just don't want to do it regardless?
It's a pain in the butt.
I'm sure.
It requires insurance. It requires double locks. There is one
Okay.
person that I've seen on Facebook that actually complies and advertises that he complies, and he shows all the measures. So people don't want to be in the system,
Mm.
hmm
and that's why I don't keep native wildlife. I really don't want to be in my former employer's system. I could keep native wildlife. I could keep captive bred unlimited amount of Ohio native species as long as I register each one of those animals, keep fantastic records, and pit tag them all. So even though these rules are put in place, they're to deter the ownership of those animals, even though
Mhm.
it is legal. So very few people will actually go through and comply, right? And I don't know the details of the Fish and Wildlife story. I've only seen little bits and clips of it, but that's always been my perspective. Working with law enforcement, they're very dedicated employees, and just you cannot be an expert in everything when you're on the front line of law enforcement like that. So really challenging. I'm not a hunter, but I've been through hunting education, and the number one thing that you learn when you're hunting, and I mean this is mantra throughout the sort of consumptive use wildlife community, is that you positively identify your target
Oh, yeah.
before you pull the trigger, right? So that obviously didn't happen in this situation.
Right. That's
Yeah,
the
so I'm a
whole
hunter,
thing.
and I during the season I go hunting pretty much not every single day, but every other day, or pretty close to it. And that is definitely one thing in all of my hunter education classes, is that they drill it into your head. Make sure you know exactly what you are targeting. That's something that's pretty important.
Yep, it's number
Yeah.
one. Yeah. So that's how I feel, and I just think sticking FWC with exotic animal regulations, that's a heavy lift for Florida. It's almost like they need their own agency, standalone agency, to enforce all of these exotic animal regulations. If they are in fact going to pass them, they need experts to actually enforce the laws, or else they'll have this is a PR nightmare, right? I mean, if as I advanced at ODNR, I was working on policy things. There's people in Tallahassee thinking like, okay, how do we get out of this? What are we going to say? What are we going to do? What's the next step? How does this impact what we had planned for 6 months to a year from now? I mean, it's big. This is a huge moment for them in the Fish and Wildlife Commission down there. They messed up. They know it, and they're strategizing how to move forward, I'm sure.
I think what you said about the comparison, that juxtaposition between Ohio, what you like about it, and then what you see as a need with the FWC and with Florida, or some kind of piece of the state organization to work alongside FWC.
Yeah.
There's not a state in the U.S. that needs that more than Florida. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, they've got more going on than anywhere. Miami has been the largest hub for international trade in wild animals, like along with I don't even know, Hong Kong and Jakarta. I don't even know, but it's crazy. So yeah, I mean, really, that's a really interesting perspective that I hadn't heard yet in all of the coverage of what happened with the FWC. And I'm sure most people here, if you don't know it, then You can find it anywhere. Just Google FWC or search it on social media, and you'll find all you need to see. So we don't need to go into all of the details, but I think that's a really interesting perspective that really makes me happy that we touched on that. So thanks, Tom, and thank you, Emily.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
bringing
thank
us
you.
there. Wow. So I think that's an interesting piece that we could also use now as a segue into probably the biggest thing that I wanted to discuss with Tom, which is the fact that he and I have these, we like to, for lack of a better term, and this is a very harsh way to put it, argue, which we don't. We really just have these animated conversations really about the semantics of what we do and what we're trying to do. And I guarantee you 100%, I know this for sure. And Tom and I don't talk a lot, by voice. We're usually like commenting on each other's posts and things like that, or on each other's podcasts or whatever. And we are 100% on the same team. I know this. Tom, you are exactly who I want to be talking to about these things. But at the same time, we always, here you go, Michael in the chat said I should have seen this coming. But we always have these kind of positive and animated, for lack of a better term. I keep wanting to say heated, but it's not heated. Animated debates.
Yeah. So, and that I've listened to sort of your theses, and I think they're very good, right? And but I had kind of been quiet until relatively recently, just because I really didn't have the time to flesh it out, right? But I think what I want to, in the where I'm coming from is, okay, this is a really good conversation. I'm hearing kind of the same things over and over again. Let me put a little bit of a wrinkle into this and see how we can come together as a community. And, I think through it all, what do you call raising turtles in captivity and breeding them and reptiles and amphibians and stuff? So the basic debate is this conservation or preservation, and we throw out words. From my perspective, being in the natural resources world, I don't think they're great fits, either one of those words. Although I tend to think that what we do is actually more conservation than preservation, at least in the historical use of the word. But for me, and I know we disagree here, but for me, I will compare this to my day job, which is horticulture. I think herpetoculture, no matter how we do it or why we do it, is a word that can unite us across all of these different concepts of why we're doing what we're doing. And I compare that to horticulture, conservation. We can do conservation horticulture, but we can also grow marijuana. That's also horticulture. And believe it or not, right now, there's a big problem in the horticulture world, the public garden world, because people are leaving their kind of, cush jobs in the public garden world, but don't pay very well. And they're using those same skills to go grow marijuana.
But I want to add something to this. So I've heard you using the word herpetoculture lately, and I don't love it either.
I know you hate that word.
I love it. No,
you don't like it.
Can I tell you why?
Yes, I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to. I don't dislike the word. So here's some things. Let's talk about things we don't like first, and then we can move past them. Ready?
Yes.
And I want to hear what you don't like too. Okay. I don't like the word hobby. For me personally. Now, this is a hobby.
Really?
The people who are watching this are hobbyists. It's a hobby, but to me, it's more. Like when I bought my house, I bought it because I wanted to see endangered species hatch. When I'm working with veterinary professionals, I'm interjecting with turtle crap that they don't want to hear. Like I'm obsessed to the point where it really is a huge part of what I'm trying to accomplish with my life. This is my life's work. It's not my livelihood. It's not how I pay the bills. It's not how I make money, but it is my life's work. And to me, it's more than a hobby. It's like a reckoning. It's why I was born.
Yeah.
And
Your
so to me, it's
purpose.
more than that. And herpetoculture, it's the person who is keeping a leopard gecko, and it's the person who is who's doing like, I don't know, who's trying to breed an endangered species that's never been bred before, that is about to go extinct in the wild, and none of the zoos have it. Like, herpetoculture and hobby is like overarching for all of that. And I want to differentiate. What are the semantics? I don't know anything that I necessarily love. That's where I kind of adopted the preservation a little bit more, because I felt like it felt a little more like we're preserving, but it wasn't like fake, that like this is conservation. But I don't know, maybe recently I'm thinking that maybe the conservation word should be used. And you just mentioned ex situ conservation, like it's different, but it's still conservation. And when we were speaking to that earlier, it really struck a chord with me. And maybe that is where you and I could find some more common ground. But I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in with words they hate, and we could start there. Or if there's anything else, Tom, you wanted to say, please go ahead.
Kevin, Emily?
I mean,
thoughts on it?
Actually, I kind of have a thought on that. I feel like I call it the hobby too, and I feel like there's not necessarily a negative connotation to it, but I think, remember, I'm coming from the zoo perspective, and in the zoo world, when we talk about hobbyists, it's in our mind, the word hobby kind of has this connotation of some guy in his basement with a bunch of turtles, right? But it's just like, this person's actually doing a lot for conservation, and a lot of what has happened in the hobby has paved the way for zookeeping. So I feel like oftentimes, if you go onto a reptile group on Facebook or something, if you mention that you work with reptiles professionally, then everyone kind of thinks that you're being a little pretentious and looking down your nose at everyone. But it's just like, no, we need to work together, not challenge each other. So I have a lot of feelings about the word hobby too. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a loaded comment. And I know Tom asked Kevin to
I can give my share if you like.
Chime in. Just everyone knows Kevin is feeling a little under the weather, so his voice is extra sultry tonight.
Yeah, sorry for this, everybody. But hey, maybe it works out, and I'll talk like this every month on purpose.
I think you sound amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Hey, girl. So the way I look at it is this. Realistically, what I do at home with my animals is a hobby. I keep animals that don't really need help right now for any purpose. There's nothing I'm doing specific for that. But they're animals that I really enjoy keeping, and it keeps me kind of grounded, wanting to work with turtles and tortoises, because I get to share like watching them grow and feed, and just the way they interact with each other. I find to be really amazing, and that's a hobby to me. But in the inverse, doing things like this, and I do educational talks about the animals, things like that. I think that part is more into like the herpetoculture aspect. And while I know I can't do that on a big share right now with the animal aspect, I just don't have the time, the resources. One day I hope to, but for right now, I enjoy my hobby dramatically. And I like to help out where I can, whether it's in video when I can find time, the once a month on here, and when I could do educational talks for kids.
Yeah,
but that's more too. That's more. That's conservation, because that's education. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
And so, Anthony, what I see herpetoculture as this umbrella, a big giant umbrella up in the sky that covers us all, that work with the captive care of reptiles and amphibians. That's herpetoculture. And then
I agree.
The why separates us into different buckets. And so and those buckets, we can share information. You know, we can take a little water from one bucket and dip it into another. And some people, that's the same person, right? So look at someone like Ryan Dumas or Emily. I'm guessing you have maybe a private reptile collection, right? So sometimes you're under that herpetoculture bucket of the professional ex situ organizational conservation aspect of herpetoculture, but at home, perhaps you have a collection of turtle morphs for your kids because they're just darn engaging species. That part of herpetoculture is the hobby of herpetoculture. And so I used a term that I would like to bring forward for things like what you do, Anthony, and that is what I'm going to call conscientious herpetoculture.
Oh, I like that. See, this is what I
Yeah.
wanted. This is when we're at work and we have these
Conscientious.
meetings about the schedule and trying to cover shifts at the hospital and what are we going to do and what new positions can we create and how are we going to leverage what we have? How are we going to
Yes.
do the best we can with what we have to work with, right? Like,
Yes.
and we
yes.
sit down and we have a finite amount of time. We're going to hash this out. We're going to figure this out. That is what I was hoping to do with
Yes.
this episode more
Yes.
so than any other.
Absolutely.
And I really like that. So you said conscientious
Con-
herpetoculture?
Yeah, conscientious herpetoculture. And I think we could come up with a list of 10 qualities of conscientious herpetoculture. It's a little different from ethical herpetoculture, which I think has a different
that's more to do with
connotation.
animal welfare.
Yeah,
which
not
is
that
important.
yeah. I think conscientious is above and beyond that. I mean, you can be an ethical herpetoculturist, but conscientious is you are truly doing and putting the animals and the species first. And that's why you're doing it, because you care so much about this species and wanting it to succeed in this world, whether that is in the wild and you need to learn everything you can about it so you can take care of your own animals. And at the same time, you can match up your captive husbandry information and perhaps relay that information back to stuff that's happening in the wild. I just listened to one of the Animals at Home podcasts today where Eric Haycraft is telling about these conehead lizards. He's discovering things from captive animals based on his husbandry modifications of temperature and relative humidity that cause these lizards to have different colors. He's had them for years. He gets the colors right, and the colors match up with the wild animals now. He used to think they were different species. We couldn't have learned that in an in situ conservation situation. So conscientious ex situ herpetoculture, I think, can have a lot of value, and it is our job to define it better and then show people how powerful it can be.
Would you co-author an article with me?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I would love that. I would love to have one of these kind of Zoom meetings to hash this stuff out and come up with definitions and then present it out there and then go with it. Like, I really think this is that important. Like, this
Absolutely.
is the future of our life's work. Like we may lose the opportunity to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not just doing what's fun or what's going to make you money or whatever. And if you're one of those people, hey, like, you like turtles too, awesome. But just because you like a certain species doesn't make us the same and doesn't make, and I'm challenging people. And that's what Dave Lee, my literary hero, did. His articles 20 years ago were challenging people on these things. And it's not just about keeping an animal. And I know there's a lot of movement, especially with the Animals at Home podcast. There's a lot of movement towards animal welfare. And that's awesome. Like, we should do everything we can to take care of animals. But we chose turtles, and those animals are different. Like, those animals are in trouble because of humans, and they need conscientious. I'm gonna have to work on my pronunciation.
Yeah, conscientious herpetoculture. I have been toying with should we call it coloniculture or something similar? I even wrote it out the other day. I don't know if anybody's using that word, but I think there's value in us identifying with other communities under that umbrella of herpetoculture. And I will tell you, the number one person that I've learned that from is Bill Strand, who hosts the Chameleon Academy podcast. You've seen him now with Madagascar, went there with Dave Kaufman, but I listen to every single one of his podcasts, and it's all about unifying a community of chameleon keepers. And that's really what inspired me to email Ryan and say, "Hey, Ryan, how's your podcast? You haven't put one out in a while." And he's like, "Well, how about I interview you?" And now we're doing it every other week. So that's where I am. We need to build this community. We need to be proactive. This theory and sort of ex situ private conservation, which is part of this conscientious herpetoculture movement that I would like to put forward. It's really, these ideas have all been formulated after the Egyptian tortoise ruling, and that has rocked our world, I think. So conscientious herpetoculture.
I like that a lot. And I just wanted to actually throw out a question from our friend Michael, which is, what is your response? And this could be for anyone or everybody. What is your response to a hobbyist who asks how what you are doing is helping with conservation of that species?
So this is the article, Michael, but if I bring out my notes, I have some things that a conscientious herpetoculture effort must be, some of which, are just ideas at this time. The animals need to be part. Yep.
Hold on.
Okay.
What article?
Sorry.
What article?
We're writing an article.
Who's writing an article?
You and me.
You just
He already
wrote it
just
in the
agreed
3
upon
minutes
this.
He already wrote it. Yeah.
You wrote it in the last 3 minutes that you've been speaking.
Well, I've been
since
writing
I
it.
asked you?
Yeah.
We're not writing it together if you've already been writing it. I thought I was asking you something really interesting where we could push each other, since we have this kind of we have a very Sam and Diane from Cheers type of romance. We're kind of on again, off again. It's very it's
hilarious.
tense. And it's tense in a loving way.
No, I don't know. I don't think it's tense, Anthony. I'm all good.
No, I'm totally kidding. It's not tense.
No,
I'm just
okay.
fun.
Yeah,
but
okay.
You're already writing something, so we're not doing this then.
No, I'm just getting ideas on paper. And the more people that we can have a part of this idea, the better. So can you guys hear that? My son is singing in the background.
Oh no, I couldn't hear that.
That's cool.
We love singing.
Yeah. So essentially we have. How are we going to prove that what we're doing is conservation to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who says, you people that are breeding Egyptian tortoises, that doesn't count. It's not important. It's worthless. Okay, so here are some of my ideas. The animals must be in a stud book. Animals have to be pit tagged. We have to know what animal is what animal. And we can talk about some of these ideas later. Again, these are just ideas. We need to consult with population experts that do recommend breedings of certain animals in that population. We need to work together to collaborate and manage that population of the particular species we really are working with. Has to be collaborative. You can't do it by yourself. That's really, really key. We have to collaborate with the government. We have to be at the table before public comment periods. They don't really take public comments seriously. They already have their mind up by that point.
Yeah, Egyptians were a great example of that.
Yeah.
Totally. We have to be respectful and comply with the law. To be a conscientious herpetoculturist is someone that does not say things like, yeah, I just got this from Joe because he brought it up from Florida and now I have a pair of these. We don't do that. We don't even talk about it. We don't think it. So those are some of the things, and education and sharing of your findings. You have to publish. You have to be writing about what you're doing. the Batagur is the first place. Find a co-author. If you don't like to write, find Anthony or I. We'll co-author. We'll help you write your articles. You need to get this information published. You show Fish and Wildlife Service a few published articles, that's 1,000 times more effective than a public comment. So those are some of the things, Michael. I think we can do it. It's not going to be everybody, and that's okay. You can do ethical herpetoculture as a hobbyist, but there's going to be collaboration needed if we truly want to make a difference and be partners with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service instead of them just saying, you don't matter.
A couple things to unpack here because I have to.
Yeah.
Number one, I've never loved you more than I do in this moment. That's number one and most important. So that's why that's number one. Okay.
Yes.
First and foremost.
Yes.
Number two, you have to realize that what Tom is talking about is we have to realize you could spend the next 20 years of your life trying to partner with Fish and Wildlife, and it may not happen.
Yep.
It might be an exercise in futility. It might be a hill that we die on, but it is the right thing to do. And for that reason, because animals come first, it's what we need to do. And then the other piece too that I just want to circle back on is you mentioned stud books. So the AZA has made it extremely difficult for private folks to participate in their species survival programs going forward, including their stud books, which have kind of been merged together over the years. And that's really unfortunate. And it makes me wonder now if it's time to start to try to organize some books in us, Oh, am I lost now, or did Steve go away? I'm not sure. Can you guys still hear me?
You
Yeah,
broke
you
up
did
just
cut
a little
out.
bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, stuff started to look a little have issues here, so you can pick it up if you want to, but stud books may be an issue going forward is my point.
Mm-hmm.
But say what you want to say about them, though.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't getting dropped off. If I am, just interrupt me and let me know.
You're
'cause I want
good.
to make sure it's not
Yeah.
ruining anything.
Yeah.
So,
Your
yeah,
point
so
still came across. Yeah.
So now the AZA wants to have, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, but not in a while, I don't think, but they to have not only a person from a zoo, well, a person from a zoo has to visit your facility, but then a head person from a zoo needs to write a letter of recommendation for you. A head person, not a person from a zoo, a head person, like a head curator, a director,
Yeah.
a senior director. Oh, Steve says two head
These
people,
two
like
head
presidents
people.
of the
Presidents,
zoo.
Top level. Yeah.
Great. Two top level people running a zoo. Great.
Good
And
luck.
I had a zoo here that was set up to come and do it. And zoos can be very bureaucratic. I had a friend at the zoo, like maybe a Ryan level, like a lead keeper who's going to come to my place and check it out. And then I know the people who run the zoo here in Connecticut, and they were going to come and they were going to write for me, but they didn't want to let him come and visit. They wanted to come and visit. And guess what? They never came and visited because it's bureaucratic. And so this is what we're up against. And again, like you said, and like we were just talking about, you have to, it's the hill that we have to die on. Unfortunately, we can't give up. And I need to be reminded of that more than anyone. But as far as stud books, maybe it's time to come up with a different idea of something that we can do. If we can't use the AZA, maybe we collaborate with some ZAA institutions. Maybe we collaborate with some smaller conservation organizations like the Turtle Room or something like that to try to, and TTPG or something to try to make something that's more organized than just, hey, I have some turtles. And oh, by the way, I got arrested for poaching, but that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's no big deal. Here I am showing up to try to get you to not pass this law.
Yeah.
Like we look really bad for a lot of reasons all the time. And I think people are not mindful of it. And I hope if we keep having these conversations, we can get better.
So I learned how to be a lobbyist at my last job at ODNR. I got the job and I thought it was just going to be Tom, go design and build some trails kind of job. That's what I thought. But I quickly realized that a group of 6 major trail types, so motorized trails, mountain bikers, the Buckeye Trail, which is backpacking, horsemen, canoeists. They had been lobbying for this the state for like a decade to get something to happen. They never gave up. Finally, they bugged in a nice way the administration so much. The administration said, okay, we will create a new position within government, call them the Trails Administrator, and you can bug him for the next 4 years. And guess what? They called me every other day for 4 years, probably. Very nice, always cordial, very professional, but they don't give up. So, how many times did you call that director that didn't come to your house? I don't know. But this is what people do that are successful. They're always there. They don't back down. I think Phil Goss is really good. And I think US Arc, he is the best thing for US Arc because he knows the game. And that's what you have to do. You have to kill them with kindness. Even if you don't agree with them, you just have to make them know that you are not going anywhere.
Squeaky wheel, yeah.
For decades. Yeah. Just like you said, Anthony, we're not kidding.
Yeah.
But our children will be better off for it if we do it.
Correct. We do it the right
play
way.
The game.
We're not selfish, yeah.
And prove that we're worthy over decades, because that's how things happen in this world, in the lobbying world.
I need to talk to you more often. I really do. And one more piece I want to add on the stud books, just so everyone knows. The Turtle Room had a stud book for Western Hermann's tortoises. It made sense to do it. And we learned a lot through that process, enough so much that we haven't dared to venture into that landscape again. Maybe it's worth considering down the line, but I'll just say, for anyone who ever wants to try to do something like that, the issue was that it was tied very heavily towards the sale of animals. And what happens there is the animals go to people who pay, and that's it. So you're looking for somebody who has the money for what you want to sell. Okay. That's kind of, I don't know, inappropriate from the beginning. And then the people who would get those animals would then either breed them if they were adults, or go ahead and sell them after the fact, after they bought them, and use the fact that they were stud book registered as a selling point for the animal to say, hey, you want this, this is stud book registered. If you buy this from me, you're going to be a part of conservation. And it's a really sad and unfortunate piece of it. And people did that with radiated tortoises as well, because Michael Ogle is somebody who historically has been very open to working with the private sector or herpetoculturists or whatever you want to call it. And he's even now has his hands tied a little bit with the AZA side in terms of what stud books can do going forward. But the radiated tortoise was one where people would say stud book, from stud book number this and this is, or this is get actual stud book numbers for the hatchlings in the past. I haven't seen that in a few years now, but using that as a selling point. And I think you're missing the point if you're doing that. And I think think that that's what killed I know that that's what killed the Western Hermann's stud book before it even had a chance. And it's unfortunate, because that could have been a flagship program to really become the model of what we could do together collaboratively. And instead it became a dead means of selling a couple animals for perhaps more money, or perhaps to a larger audience.
Really interesting. And, I did not say demonetize the animals that are involved in conscientious herpetoculture, but that's certainly on my mind. And the only way I say that is because if we, as private herpetoculturists united, are going to emulate what the AZA is doing, it has to be not for profit at a minimum. And so that doesn't mean you can't sell animals, but it's a not-for-profit venture.
That's
you guys know point. A lot about not-for-profits. I work for a not-for-profit. We have a $16 million budget, and we're bringing lots of revenue. Zoos are making money off their animals, okay? They are using the animals to make money. It's just not by exchanging the animals with other organizations. But are they using animals to generate revenue? Yes, absolutely. It's just that they're doing it as a not-for-profit 501c3 corporation. And in our country, in our heads, that status basically gives you carte blanche. It gives you the benefit of the doubt with anyone you want to partner with, because there's this certain level of trust that you're doing it for the right reasons. And there's always question when there's profit involved. And that's just how our country works. A certain amount of oversight, Steve. Absolutely. Yes. As a 501c3, you have to report lots of information to the federal government. Like I have to report how many trees we acquire each year or how many plants we acquire. So absolutely.
Really interesting points. And I think that is a good microcosm for kind of what we need to be better at. And I think, if you're tuning into this, I encourage you to really do some soul searching and think about, why are you in this? I think all the time, if this was totally demonetized, like nothing was worth anything, it was just what you wanted to have and what needed to be bred to be, to have less pressure or whatever, I mean, I guess it'd be less pressure if there was no money, no monetary value, but let's just say people wanted to collect things to keep as pets and pass around or whatever. Like, I don't know, things are endangered. If it was just what you wanted to breed because it needed help, or just what you wanted to keep because you enjoyed it, how many people would have how many animals, and how many people that we know that are like pillars of our community would be gone if there was no monetary incentive for breeding animals.
Yeah, and I'm not against the concept of conservation by commercialization. I'm not against having those animals, a large population of even fairly inbred animals. I think that can have positive benefits too. But in my lifetime, I don't think the conservation by commercialization argument is going to win over anyone that is employed by the government to do conservation. And I was one of those people for 20 years. So
yeah, and I'm not against people making a living, like breeding, selling it. Like, it is what it is. Some of my
absolutely
best friends have made a living doing that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm and I love them.
What a great life. I mean, really, to be surrounded by lots of turtles and giving people the opportunity to have an amazing pet.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that what we put forward needs to be a more polished version of who we are. And I've always said, the most public account of who we are is like the classified ads. Like, if I'm a wildlife agent, that's the first place I go to see what's cooking, right? And it's gross. It's gross.
Yeah.
It's like the least educated members of our demographic, making it look like it's all about the money, looking for a quick buck. Like, it's really sad and it's unfortunate. And then a lot of people who are more experienced and know a little better are experienced enough to know that they don't want to be in the public eye, so they get quieter and they fall behind the scenes. So, if we can spread positive messages and help to challenge people to be better, ourselves included. I'm not perfect and I need to be better in a lot of ways. That's what these platforms are about. It's not just about geeking out about what you're passionate about and what makes you excited, but like, what can we do to be better? Because only then can we go to sleep at night, or throw in the towel one day and say, I did everything I could do from my perspective, from my position in life, to try to help, as opposed to, maybe I did exploit animals for 20 years back then or whatever,
and just if you look at the few charismatic animals that have gone extinct in the recently, my son, you probably are going to hear that because my son just started playing the electric guitar.
That's awesome.
But
he just knows he's not supposed to do that on Thursdays, so he's
exactly.
This is a Monday. There's no chance.
So, this is funny. The bottom line, and I totally lost my train of thought of what I was going to say there, though. But
just so you know, I can barely hear it. I can barely hear it, and it sounds kind of awesome. So
okay,
cool.
Sweet. It's my soundtrack. When you need an animal because a species is extinct and the only animals are in captivity, nobody cares about that. Nobody questions it. It's like, holy crap, at least we have a few. So if radiated tortoises go extinct in Madagascar, we still can put some back there. We have the tools, we have the genetic ability, the skills to be able to introduce these animals. And we'll have literally 1,000+ animals to choose from. Even though this effort really wasn't coordinated. I mean, there's a stud book for radiated tortoises. So yeah, if there's 5 radiated tortoises left in the wild, we're sending them back. Nobody's going to question it. I guarantee it. Yes,
Tom, I want to challenge you on that.
Okay.
So think about an animal like the axolotl, which is basically extinct in its native range, but in herpetoculture, it's very, very prominent because one animal can produce 300 more at a clip. So in captivity, they flourish, but in the wild, you're hard pressed to find one, looking for it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, the problem with axolotls is that they've been bred with tiger salamanders, and so the genetics is really poor.
Is that the case with all of them? I wasn't aware. I know they're closely related.
No, the axolotls that are in the pet trade, they've been interbred.
Okay.
So maybe I have no idea what percent DNA, but that is the particular problem with axolotls.
Okay.
So they're going to live as a captive species.
Yeah.
That's isn't that an interesting survival method? Like, okay, yeah, the humans are going to destroy our habitat. However, we're going to trick them into them taking care of us and providing these little homes in their homes. That's a pretty interesting reproductive strategy, evolutionary strategy. Plants do it a lot.
Just being neonate forever?
No, just tricking humans to provide them habitats.
Like dogs did, yeah.
The stupid cute gills that they have.
Yeah. Like, oh my God. Like, Johnny Axolotl, can you believe it? We made it into the video game. Yes, they're going to love us and take care of us forever. Our species will never go extinct. That's the other side of the coin. Okay, we destroyed the habitat. Is nature real anymore? Is there truly in situ and ex situ conservation? Or are we just all living in this planet and we're cutting it up into these little different continents and making these, false borders, and ultimately that's what we do as people.
And you as a plant person that the wilderness that used to exist is so far gone already that it's really it's really crazy to think about that too.
Yeah, and I used to work for the State Nature Preserve Division in Ohio. And that whole program was established in 1970 based on the fact that you could go out and find these remnants of Ohio and call it a state nature preserve and put a fence around it. And it would be like that forever. Well, guess what? 40 years from now, or now 50 years later, those preserves are like infected with invasive species and are losing their rare species, even though we put a fence around it and called it a state nature preserve. So the world is changing, and our knowledge of ecology and how to manage rare species is changing. And in the community, there's enough of us that we can work together and I think make a difference. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we set up these captive populations that are managed perhaps by a nonprofit. And then we can say to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, look, we're managing this population. It's coordinated by a nonprofit. How does this change your decision?
Great point. Okay,
That's
so
my
here
hope.
now we're at an hour now. Okay, Emily, did you have something to say?
No. I was just gonna say that was
Just-
like beautifully put. I really like the way you stated that. I completely agree.
See,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm telling you, he's like my new man crush.
Aha.
So here's what I want to do, and Steve put this in we have a chat that only we can see. I know I've mentioned this before on the show as well. So Steve says we'll have to work together to make those. See comment on 10 tenets of conscientious turtle culture. So I would like to propose now. It was a year plus ago now that we first started working on really developing a strategy and a way of a plan for combating the Egyptian tortoise legislation, right? So Ralph and James Badman and Russ and Michael and I don't know who else I'm forgetting. We all kind of got together and said, hey, we need to come up with something so that it shows that we have the clout of several nonprofit organizations behind this, saying, hey, here's what's being done. And the main point angle that we took was, here's the amount of hatchlings in the last 3 years, over 500 hatchlings in the last 3 years that have been produced. And here's how many have been produced in zoos, like less than 5 in the last 3 years. That is incredible for a species that's been kept in zoos and privately for a long time. And that was really important work, but that's over now. And we made a valiant effort, and I feel very proud and very proud of the work that we did, very grateful for the people that collaborated on that. But now there's, new things going on, and we have this wonderful idea, Tom, that you're talking about. I'm so excited, and I don't want to steal your thunder. So you're talking about being collaborative. I want you to know that we're in, and I'd love to see Michael or anyone else from the TTPG who'd be interested in doing this. I always use Michael just because he's probably my closest friend out of everyone there, just because, he's always available. Thanks, Michael. How do we get together some sort of, and anyone else who wants to be involved, who's a part of an organization. Emily, would love to have you, like, to have meetings to discuss, okay, how do we come up with something that we can kind of present? And we have all these different organizations with their websites that can say, hey, we're a part of this summit or this special group that came together, that collaborated to identify what people should be aspiring to. I can't tell you how many times people reach out to me and say, hey, Anthony, I'm interested. I want to know, what species should I keep to make the biggest impact? And really, it may not be what species you keep, but how, right? And Tom, you're a founding member of, and not just from animal welfare, but like how you present yourself, how you present the work you're doing. You're a founding member of the Conixis working group, like,
Absolutely.
right? Like, that's another group, right? Another organization.
That's a model.
That if we can bring these together and then come up with some of these definitions and some of these terms, again, you and I love talking about semantics, we can maybe get some ideas on paper, you already did, and build on that and fine tune it, and then get it on all the websites. Steve Ender says that he thinks another friend of ours would be great on that. So we're already volunteering people.
Excellent. This is exciting, and what we're doing is turning this moment where the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has said, you don't matter, and give us, they've basically, if you read that whole document, they give us the blueprint. And all we need to do, it's a little more complicated than that, but just read everything they said.
You're right, though.
And say, we can do that. We can do that. We can do that. We can do that. And then we show it to them. They're like, oh,
Nice job.
interesting. Yeah. Wow. it takes persistence, it takes patience, it takes civility, but you can change minds. And I think this Egyptian tortoise ruling is the place that we move forward, we unite, work together.
I love it. And just
Yeah.
remember too, one more takeaway, like it can be really difficult when there's people who are so polar opposite from where we stand in terms of our viewpoints and what we really think is important and that we hold a lot of value in. But that's really the name of the game, is bringing together stakeholders from the opposite side. So we start off by bringing stakeholders together like this, who are really allies. We wouldn't be on this podcast together if we were not allies. But then taking it a step further and looking for folks outside of that, and even perhaps again across the aisle, who actually hate what we do, because as much as we may not be able to even join forces with them ever in any reasonable way, we may be able to learn from what they're saying so that we can identify our own weaknesses and try to downplay those and then play up the things that we think are real selling points, right? Like, how can you go to Disney and spend 85% of your time? I'm going this week, by the way. How can you spend 85% of your time waiting in lines to then be on the plane ride back thinking, man, I can't wait to go and do that again? The reason is because they know what their weak points are, and they come up with plans to navigate that. And then they know what their strong points are, and they know how to really highlight and build up those experiences. So we need to be like Disney. Thoughtful.
Yeah. Hey, we went to Disney, and what is it called? Genie Plus or something like that?
I don't even know.
We didn't wait in a single line.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh.
Okay, maybe I do care.
I didn't ask how much it cost. That's the way
That's
to do it,
helpful.
though.
It's like an app or something, right?
You wear these things called magic bands, and then you just like, it's like, oh, there's the line for the Genie Plus people, and you just like walk by all the people, and it's like legal cutting.
Mhm.
Legal cutting.
Yeah, we did it at
love it.
Disneyland, and it was like a way different experience, though. Like we felt
That's
like we
where we
got
did it.
gypped.
Oh,
Oh, really? It worked. It worked for you? Yeah.
Yeah.
No. The first ride we wanted to get on said we had to wait 4 hours. We're like, this is ridiculous. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
Why did we waste our money?
We didn't
Yeah.
have that.
That might be the magic band, but not the Genie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sounds like two different
Yeah,
things.
maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But
Just saying.
yeah, no, I mean, I love turtles, guys, and this is all about. I see value. So I will tell you 100%. I was always conflicted when I worked in conservation, and I'm like, why do I feel conflicted? Why is this? What's the conflict? I'm working to protect a population of spotted turtles and Blanding's turtles and Massasaugas. Yet I'm producing hingebacks at home. Why can't I do both? These people over here say, oh, you can't do that, or there's something wrong with that. No, there's not. Both are good. Both are important. If we did not know how to take care of animals in captivity, we would not be able to advance conservation. And ultimately, I think that if we practice this conscientious herpetoculture, we publish what we learn, we share what we learn with scientists, with government, with everybody, then we will truly, absolutely make a difference. And this separation that we draw, and I will tell you, don't anybody out there that's legally keeping reptiles and amphibians, don't let people make you feel that that's not important, because there is value. But we're going to work on showing you how that's valuable and how you can make it even more valuable. That's our goal.
I love you.
Yeah, Tom, you're a great speaker.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because it's difficult in text, and I don't mean text like phone text, but like messenger text, social media comments. It's tough to really hash this stuff out, and again, it's wild that it took us this long. But I really, this is funny and embarrassing at the same time. I feel like I understand you for the first time,
Okay.
even though I've been watching your stuff.
Yeah.
I really do understand where you're coming from more, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. And I think anytime that I've felt like things I was reading that you wrote where I'm like, I don't know, it's really been a lot of semantics for me. So this has been really, really helpful. I hope that other folks have gotten a lot out of it. I look forward to talking to Tom more. If you're somebody who has a nonprofit or is involved in some sort of institution or something like that and wants to be involved in what we're talking about with actually hashing things out, some definitions and some ideas about how we can be better, or if you have a place where you'd like to, like a website where you'd like to put that up, I'm not saying we're going to say yes, but I'm saying you could reach out. Did that sound really pompous? I'm just saying.
So Anthony, I will say,
this is a special club.
It's
yeah, it's semantics.
I will guarantee you, we are doing everything we need to do as a group, right? It's just, and that's the whole point of an organization, right, Anthony? I mean, you work for this hospital, and you have, I don't know how many people work at your vet clinic.
Like 105.
So 100,
wow.
and that's about, we have about 130 employees. Working with people is hard. I mean, it's hard. You're like,
yeah.
You come home at the end of the day and it's like,
drained.
Why do I put myself through this? Well, it's that's what I do, right? It's hard. I have 40 people that I work with directly that they all need something from me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they all have something different. They're all good at something. Yeah, they suck at something. So, so do I.
Yep, me too.
And so it's not about us doing better, in my opinion. It's about us taking all the good things that we're good at and just magnifying that across the whole organization and working together as this body of people. And, and that's why organizations exist in our society, because we can't all do everything great. We can't all keep great records. We can't all give away turtles for free to everybody. But we can't all write scientific articles. But I guarantee you, within our circle and lots of other people that we could recruit to the process, we've got those skills and talents. It's just about amplifying them across the organization. So it's not necessarily about us doing better. It's just about us working together. That's how I like to phrase it.
Understanding that perception is everything as well, and just what the examples we put out of what we're doing, how do we highlight that? I think about that a lot, and I'm probably not successful all the time, but I do think about it a lot. And I think that's the first step. If you're not thinking about that and you're just thinking about how to have a good time and how to make a buck, then we might need to work on that a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you that's perfectly okay, but it's not conscientious herpetoculture, and it's not conservation or preservation, most likely.
Love it. I love it. And any last thoughts for anybody? Emily, this is a little bit new. This is nerding out to a level of turtleness that you probably don't do on a daily basis. So I apologize. And I also am grateful for your being such a good sport.
I have two things on my end. First of all, awesome. Anthony, you are such a hype man. I love it. It is so refreshing. It's just, you're always so positive. The second thing is behind you, Tom, there's a fish tank, and I've been watching a fish swimming back and forth this whole time. Is there a turtle in there too?
No, just fish. There's some, you're probably seeing the rosy reds.
Missed opportunity.
Feeder for our largemouth bass. But below there's the lower enclosure. Those are fire-bellied toads. So,
okay.
I don't have any turtles in my office, unfortunately, but that might change.
Zero turtle, Tom. It's embarrassing.
Tom, If you're going to put the one species in your offense, what's it going to be?
Oh, I can't. That's a secret. I cannot reveal
That's a secret.
Spangler.
All right.
Spangler, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a testudo.
Oh.
Hmm.
Oh, don't say it. Fish and Wildlife. Just kidding.
It's not that one.
It's not that one. Testudo.
Do you want to know what I have in my office right now?
Yes.
In
Yep.
quarantine?
Sure
I
do.
have 2 death adders. They're in quarantine.
What?
Yep. There's a sneak peek. We're going to be opening a death adder exhibit in the next few months. So keep your eyes
You're
peeled.
excited by this.
Mhm.
Terrified by that. I'm
Yeah.
terrified I'm in the same state.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So I have the book on the bookshelf. The Roger
Death Adder book?
Conant's.
Ah, yeah.
You guys know this book
Life and Times. Yeah.
of Roger Conant?
Mhm.
This book convinced me to not be a zookeeper herpetologist because all of his friends die of snake bite.
What a way to go.
Don't put that into the air. Don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't
Clear
say
that out.
that.
Yeah.
How dare you?
I mean, that was in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and
Yeah.
now we have much safer protocols. But
Mhm.
I mean, that's a relatively new concept, right? I mean, people were still free handling venomous snakes when in the 80s and 90s when I was a kid.
They still are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So even, but not so much in zoos though.
No.
Well, at least in AZA facilities.
Mhm.
Protected contact is all
Yep.
the rage. Had I learned about protected contact when I was like 13, I probably would have been a zookeeper.
Yeah.
But
We have a lot of
that's
shift
fun.
boxes for some of our more dangerous guys. I've been promoting that just for safety.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a lot safer now.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing chat with you guys. I really appreciate it. I hope that the viewers enjoyed it as much as I did. I think Tom, you're what an amazing addition to our world of turtle nerds, and I can't be more proud and grateful to call you a colleague and a friend. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for everything you're doing. Looking forward to collaborating more. Hopefully just lending a hand to what it seems like you've already been doing before I realized that. Like, let's do this together. Like, I've already done it all.
Well,
but yeah, sure.
Yeah. No,
I said be collaborative.
No,
so now
we
I have
need
to say
we
yes
need
to you, Anthony.
we need to flesh those ideas out, and we need
Yeah.
to do it together. And
Yeah.
so I think
And then we can start. We have these platforms like we talked about. So
Yep.
the Pondcast, Let's Talk Turtles, your
Yep.
YouTube. We can start to really, when we decide what it is that we want to stick with, start to really drive that home with folks, and hopefully gain some traction, and maybe change. A great accomplishment I think would be if we could come up with some terms to use, some hashtags to use, whatever it is. And then they start to show up in people's posts and people's videos that are not involved in that
I
process.
like that.
That I think would be the ultimate.
That's
victory,
success. That's
right?
your
To measure
benchmark.
success.
That's
Correct.
your target.
Pie in the
Yep.
sky, right? But these are the things we have to think about as opposed to.
It's got to be
"Oh, I just
measurable.
I want to take in one more species and just
Yeah.
cram more animals in and breed
Yeah.
one more species or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
how do I make the most impact? And I love writing for that reason. Like, I feel like my writing has way more of an impact, and even the crappy YouTube videos I made 12 years ago had more of an impact than a lot of the species that I produced. And all of it is important, but I just think we need to flip the paradigm a little bit and think more critically about how we can make a more positive impact.
Absolutely.
Cool. Kev,
Thanks,
what do you
guys.
got, man?
I agree wholeheartedly. I've been enjoying this conversation. I haven't talked a lot because of this stuff going on.
So
But this has
sultry.
been one of my favorite podcasts in a while. So Tom,
That's
thank
saying
you for being thank you for being a guest. I really appreciated hearing your voice, talking to you as far as just seeing posts online. So this has been great, and I look forward to talking to you more in the future. And one last thing, as far as this goes, you guys should definitely use acronyms. Governments love acronyms. So I know we talked about something in the past, Anthony, where it was like carapace or plastron, do the opposite and make it all together.
We did come up with one that was carapace. I like that one a lot, but
Well, can that be spoken about now or no?
I don't even remember anymore.
Okay.
I think it was more like what the AZA ended up doing with their SAFE program. It was like, a lot of people are focusing on non-natives. It was something we were doing with Chris to like, let's focus, because New Jersey has good laws that allow you to have a permit to work with stuff that would do well in that environment, like native species, then we could actually, do something, put something together to actually put words behind what we're doing and some organization behind what we're doing. But Steve is saying he hates acronyms. I knew that already because he hated when I came up with those acronyms. They were forced, but they weren't bad.
I will tell you,
cheesy's good. Yeah.
when I started working in the central office, well, kind of administration, I created this cuss jar for anybody that referred to our agency as the acronym, because we had this nasty habit of talking about ourselves like that in public, and nobody knew what that meant. And nobody would look. The only data we had to know about how people were finding us and interacting with us was Google search terms. You can't get that anymore. But nobody was searching for DNAP to find us. It was always State Nature Preserve. So I'm like, do not ever use that acronym again. Come up with a short name that people remember. People will make an acronym out of it anyways, but that's just, that's Two Turtle Tom, Triple T. I don't know if people will do that, but that's why I chose Two Turtle Tom. It's just real quick, real easy. Yeah, maybe people will say Triple T, but it's always Two Turtle Tom. Anyways, thanks, guys. And I will say, the animals that Kevin, the reason why I say I can't is because it may or may not happen. So we'll see.
Yeah, no worries.
I
Love it.
I cannot.
I'm not offended.
Thanks.
Yeah, you guys will eventually know. I'm working on something. So
cool.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you everyone who tuned in. This has been a real treat. Looking forward to, in 2 weeks, getting on again. We'll be guestless, but hopefully we'll be able to chat about current events, what's going on, maybe learn more about Emily, because my goodness, every time we're on here there's something interesting that comes out, sometimes multiple, like active hunter. Okay.
Yeah.
Death adders in the office.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I
That's
want to talk
awesome.
about the
There's
hunting
always
afterwards
something.
as well.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just the best. Yeah. So thank you all. Two Turtle Tom. This is Tall Turtle Tony and the gang. Emily, Kevin, I appreciate you all. Steve behind the scenes. Love you, buddy. Everybody who tuned in, thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.